Welcome to the Pop Culture Spectrum. I am your host, Dan Experience. That's right, babies. I am back. I know it's been quite a hiatus for me. It's been a long, crazy summer, but I am back. I'll get into that a little bit more towards the end of the show. We'll do the fun stuff first, and then we'll do the serious stuff at the end. That way, if any of you are just interested in the fun stuff, you can turn it off once we're done with that. But yeah, you may have noticed that we have a new theme song, and that is my old theme song was by the band Goosed, and during my hiatus, they put out a new album called Nest to Nothing, and I decided, since they put out that new album, that's fantastic. You should all check it out. You can follow them at Goosed by God on Instagram. But the new theme song is called The Size of Human Suffering, and that is by the band Goosed off of their new album, Nest to Nothing. Really excited about that. Also want to say a shout out to Patrick and Joe over at the Guiltless podcast. They just put on the Guiltless comedy night that I was hoping to be more of a part of, but due to the things that we'll get into later, I wasn't able to. But they did an awesome job with it. They sold out the show. They were able to donate their money, the proceeds from it. So shout out to Patrick and Joe. As always, go to guiltlessnetwork.com. This show, the Guiltless podcast, the FUC podcast, Equal Fights. A lot of great shows out there. So go to guiltlessnetwork.com and shout out to Joe and Patrick for that. So today's episode, and what brought me back out of my hiatus, I'm going to be interviewing a filmmaker that is going to be shooting a movie in Akron. I'm very excited to talk to him. It's an interview that I recorded yesterday. And anybody that knows me knows that I love horror movies, and this movie that I will be talking to Jason Woods about is a horror movie. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. Joining me live via Skype is director Jason E. Woods, who is coming out with a horror movie called Copley Road. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
So you're out in LA right now, is that?
That's correct. Yes.
All right.
Hot out here.
Let's why don't we start off with you just telling people out there what the movie Copley Road is about. Tell us a little bit about the film.
Sure, I appreciate that. Yeah, so Copley Road is a feature-length horror anthology. 5 short films that are combined together to form one large film. I'm really excited about the project. It's going to be a great opportunity to connect with various different people within the Ohio area and work together on one big, massive project. So I can't wait for it. It's going to be great. We're filming next summer.
So you said around the Ohio area. Where all are you planning on filming?
Sure. So currently we're looking at Akron, Cleveland, Copley, and then there's even some sections that take place outside of Ohio too. For example, Michigan. Okay. But we'll talk more about that. I'll reveal more about that in the upcoming months.
Okay. So you said that you're going to be shooting it next summer. Do you have a tentative release date on when you hope to be able to put it out there for people to see?
Sure. It will probably be available about a year after that.
Okay. So
probably next
summer of 2021?
Correct.
Awesome. So are you from the Akron area?
Correct. I was born and raised in the west side of Akron.
Okay. So did you grew up off of Copley Road?
Yes.
I did.
Spent many years of my life walking up down that street.
Yeah, I did as well. I was actually, for anybody out there that's listening that doesn't know, Copley Road is a road in Akron, Ohio. It stretches out west into Copley and I think into like close to the Medina area. It's a pretty long road. And I grew up off of Copley Road right into Copley, like right on the border of Copley and Akron. So my sister told me that she would be mad if I didn't give her a shout out on this episode. But my sister is actually the one that put me on to your movie and got me really excited about it. So you grew up on the west side of Akron. Is there a specific part of Copley Road that this is based on? Because as I mentioned, this Copley Road is a fairly long road.
Absolutely. Yes, it's a very long road. I think that the beauty of doing a horror anthology is that there's several different short films. So there's pieces that take place in various spots of Copley. So there will be sections on the west side of Akron. There'll be sections in Copley and various other areas throughout Akron as well. So it's not limited just to Copley Road, but it's definitely important to the film.
Very cool idea.
We want to represent everyone.
Very cool idea. You start shooting next summer. Do you already have all the stars of the film lined up? Are you going to be doing auditions? How's that going to work?
Sure. Yes, we will be doing auditions in the Akron, Cleveland area. This will be, I would say, probably around March of next year.
Okay.
So stay tuned to our Facebook page. We'll be making announcements there regarding auditions and possibilities to join as crew or cast, extra work, you name it.
Yeah, and everybody out there that's listening, like you just mentioned, the Facebook page, go out there, everyone that's listening. The Facebook page is Copley Road Movie. Is that accurate?
That is correct, yes.
Go out there and follow that page. You're doing something really cool with that I really enjoy watching, and that's you're spotlighting a lot of local talent from the Northeast Ohio area on your Facebook page, which I think is just super cool. Do you have a favorite of those submissions that you've received so far?
No, there's actually just so much. I'm blown away actually daily by the submissions that we're receiving. We have a lot in our queue still, but we're really trying to show a variety just to showcase the amount of talent in all of Ohio, really. We've received some artwork that's been mind-blowing, artists of every form, music, entertainment, even things that are not necessarily art. Well, I guess you call it art, but like food and just very random things. There's so many places to connect with in the Ohio area, and it's a celebration of the culture of Northeast Ohio. It's been a really great experience. I haven't had a favorite yet. I just really like all of it, really.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that's super cool that you're doing that. So everybody go out there, follow you on Facebook, go to that Facebook page, not only for information about the movie that looks super interesting, but also for that local talent that you're showcasing. So I want to know a little bit more about you. How did you get into filmmaking?
I appreciate that. So I've been writing since I was about 14 years old. I remember in high school, I did a lot of writing there. I know during recess, our typing teacher would allow me to stay behind during recess and write in her office. And so I would constantly work on scripts back then. My first script was a horror film called The Deviant, which I may re-release that. I may reshoot that at some point. I also shot a horror film during my time working at Summit Mall. I tried to shoot a horror film. It was called Scream at Dairy Queen. Myself and my coworkers. Yeah, it was a disaster. Me and my coworkers, we filmed about one day before mall security shut us down. Who would have thought we would need permits to do that? But tons of fun. The footage is just iconic. I really love that. It really inspired me to do more as a writer. Originally, I wanted to be a writer, and I remember I wrote an action adventure horror script. So 3 genres, I guess, rolled into one. And I sent it out to various studios in Hollywood, and one producer called me back, and they were really excited about the script, but they were more into me. They wanted to kind of fill me out to kind of get a sense of who I was. And in that conversation, they kind of routed me into saying everything that I shouldn't have said, basically saying, this is your first script, you're a beginner, this is a hobby for you, it's not real, you don't really know what you're doing. And through that conversation, I was trying to defend myself, saying, no, I do know what I'm doing. This is my dream. And eventually he said, well, if this is your dream, then why are you in Ohio? Like, why aren't you out in Hollywood where all the opportunities are, the jobs are, the studios, the films? And that was a really hard conversation for me. I know leaving that conversation, I really spent a lot of time reflecting on what I wanted to do in my life and how was I going to do it and where the resources were. And so eventually I made the decision that I would move to California. And I packed everything I owned into my Jeep. I saved about $3,000, and that was like my budget to get to California. And the funny part is when I moved out here, I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to stay, family, friends, nothing. I just packed everything I had and just drove. En route here, my vehicle broke down in New Mexico. It was my transmission that blew out. That was $2,500 to fix. So when I got here, I had $500 to my name.
Ouch.
And yeah, it was a really, really hard time. And within the first week of being here, someone had broke into my vehicle and stole $300 of the remaining $500. And they stole my computer, so I couldn't write at that point. I couldn't do anything. I could barely survive. I had a budget of about $5 per day for food, and I was basically living out of my car for several months at that point. And it was a really, really hard time for me. It really forced me to grow up very, very fast and make a lot of decisions regarding, am I really meant for this career? What am I doing with myself? Am I going to die out here? I remember losing a bunch of weight. I lost about 40 or 50 pounds. I remember the first time I went back home, my family saw me, and they all thought that I was either on drugs or I had some sort of terminal illness that I was trying to hide from them because of how sick I got. Yeah, but really it was just two things. One, I didn't have any food. And then secondly, I found, by joining a gym, that was like my everything. That was my TV, my shower, my laundromat, my interaction with anyone, just working out in the gym all day long. I would be the guy on the treadmill, just walking randomly. So during that process, it really made me stronger. It really made me fight harder, and I wrote a lot more scripts on paper until I was able to afford a computer. And from there, back to the process of more scripts and sending them out to different studios. And the studios would like my work, but there would always be something that they would want to change. And that's how Hollywood is to some degree. But a lot of times the changes are more drastic than I wanted them to be. And it would change the message of what I was trying to say, something that I wasn't trying to say. And so from there, it was really a decision of, was I okay with what would happen to my script? And I wasn't. And so eventually I met some friends in California who were actually from Ohio, one from Youngstown, the other from New Philadelphia. And they were filmmakers, and they allowed me to join them on a set of their web series. It's called Lone Wolf McCrae. And so I worked in that web series for about a summer, doing everything from making hot dogs and watching bags to working with grips and gaffers. And in that process, I decided that I wanted to become a filmmaker. That way I could make my films my way and have the experience necessary to grow from doing short films to doing larger films. My first short film was called DUI, and it was accepted into Screamfest, which is the largest and longest running horror film festival in the United States. And so that was a really, really huge.
Yeah, I actually watched that a couple of days ago. Really, really well done. And did you? I think I noticed in the credits that you were the writer and the producer of that, but you didn't direct that one.
That's correct. Yes. So
will you be directing on Copley Road?
That is correct. Yes. Yes. So Copley Road is my first feature debut as a director. I did direct another short film that came out this year called The Bowels. This one's a really extreme horror film. That one was tons of fun as well. Really building experience there. Both films are award-winning films. The Bowels is definitely catering more to a horror audience. There's a lot of shock value into that project, but we had a great time making it, and I was really proud of the way it turned out. And both of those films have opened up a lot of doors for me to have my work played across the country, and also just making relationships and building resources to be able to make Copley Road.
Now, I know DUI is available to watch on YouTube. Is The Bowels also available to watch on YouTube?
There's a trailer for The Bowels on YouTube. The film is currently in the festival circuit, so we haven't released it yet on YouTube.
Okay, cool.
So you stay tuned to for different festivals. It may play at another festival this year. I'm not sure yet, but we'll submit it to a few more and see what happens.
Right on, nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed DUI. A lot of times when you see independent creative people that don't have like major studio backing, or if you're talking about music, major label backing, a lot of times things can come off real amateur looking or sounding. And I didn't get any of that with DUI. I thought it was really well made, especially one of the unsung heroes of the filmmaking world is sound editing. And I thought the sound editing in DUI was perfect. The Foley work from the stabbing sounds and everything.
Oh yes.
Yeah, real brutal. And the lighting was great. So I'm really looking forward. I'm interested in seeing The Bowels when it gets released, and I'm really looking forward to Copley Road. So it seems like you have a penchant for horror films. Where did that come from?
Sure. It's funny. Like when I first started as a writer, even though my first script was a horror script, I really wasn't into horror. I was really more into martial arts action films. I was born and raised off of Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan,
sure.
And that's really why I became a filmmaker. I really wanted to do martial arts films. And attempting to sell scripts to Hollywood, a lot of times they won't read a martial arts script because you don't really see them a lot. It's hard to get those to the desk of someone who actually would make it. And then when you do, they have to ask the question from a business standpoint, how are we going to make this profitable if we don't have Jackie Chan or Jet Li in the movie? What are you going to do to make this a sellable film? And so it was just a struggle to do that. At some point, I crossed over from being a writer to being a filmmaker. And at that point, I had to live with the idea that if I make a martial arts movie, it's going to be very difficult to get a general audience to see it. And so I thought, well, what could I do artistically that could potentially get seen and get a lot of attention? And then I would slowly, gradually work my way back to what I want to do. And so I thought about films like The Matrix, where it's not really a martial arts film, but it has martial arts in it. And so I thought, well, what can I do artistically that would get people to watch and notice me as a writer, but also slowly pave the way for that. And I thought thriller, horror, those are great genres for independent filmmakers at my level, because that's one of the only genres where you can make a film without having a major star in it, and people will still watch it if the concept is big enough to form a connection with the audience.
Yeah, definitely. So like, even if you go back to like the first Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 that were shoestring budget, filmmakers just starting out, no name actors or anything, done by Sam Raimi, and then Sam Raimi goes on to direct The Quick and the Dead, which was a Western movie. He directed the Spider-Man movies, which were action movies, so it definitely opens up the door.
Absolutely. It's a great genre to start off if you're a new filmmaker. I would definitely recommend horror genre.
Do you have any favorite horror movies?
I love the old Stephen King's It. That was always a staple in my childhood.
Yeah.
Pennywise. Yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a really great film for me as well. I liked how gritty and raw it felt. A lot of George Romero films, I thought he does a great job at really going there, especially at a time where he was a pioneer and really pushing the envelope. I like Alfred Hitchcock. I like the way that he really builds up, the suspense. If I can try to combine those together, that's kind of how I try to form my art style.
Nice.
Yeah. But I definitely like the balance between suspense and then actually going there and taking it as far as you can go.
Absolutely. So there have been a few movies. First, let me ask, with Copley Road, do you have any studio backing, or is this an independent feature?
This is an independent feature.
Okay, perfect. So there have been some movies that have been set in Akron, but not really a whole lot of movies that have been shot in Akron. I know that, especially recently, Cleveland has had a lot of movie industry, like some of the Avengers movies, some of the scenes were shot up there. But as far as being shot in Akron, I know back in the late 80s there was a horror movie called The Dead Next Door that was shot in Akron. And then a few years ago there was another quasi-horror movie called My Friend Dahmer about Jeffrey Dahmer that was shot in the Bath area, but it's not exactly a hotbed of the film industry. What made you decide to actually shoot in Akron rather than just set it on Copley Road and shoot it out in LA where you live?
Sure. That was originally my vision. Since becoming a writer, I always wanted to film or to make films in Akron. I never wanted to leave Ohio. But I felt at the time that I needed to learn to become a better filmmaker and then to get the resources so that I could film in Ohio and that other people would have the opportunity and not feel the way that I felt like I was trapped. And so this film was the perfect vehicle for me to go back there and celebrate who I am and everything that I've been through to get to this point in my career. And so I've always wanted to do that, but now the opportunity is there. Also with Ohio or Akron specifically, I feel there's so much missed opportunity in that area. Just looking at how much things have changed since I lived there. I go back and the neighborhoods where I used to live in, they're boarded up now. Like the house that I used to live in, the back house is just a stack of wood. I saw that recently when I was there, and it's heartbreaking. And also seeing things like, the malls where I used to travel, like Rolling Acres Mall, it's not there anymore.
Rolling Acres Mall was a real heartbreaking scene because it was thriving. When I was a kid, Rolling Acres Mall was a thriving place. Like my grandma used to take us there, and it was this big, fancy, awesome place. And to see what happened to it at the end there was really heartbreaking.
Absolutely, but I think a lot of it also it creates from a artistic standpoint. There's a lot of visuals in that type of environment that people overlook. Like for a studio, you really have to pay a lot of money to capture the look of something looking a certain way, like like an old mall or an old building that's not what it used to be. But now there's a lot of that's there that you could film for a great price and actually capture the effect of being on a studio set that would cost a lot of money for a studio to make.
Awesome. Well, I think it's really, really cool that you're shooting it in Akron. As far as filmmaking in general, do you have any? Because you're, like you said, this is gonna be your feature film directorial debut. Do you have
Sure.
any favorite directors that have influenced you?
Sure. I like Antoine Fuqua. I think he does a great job with like creating a very gritty, raw feel. Look at like Training Day or End of Watch. Something about his films really have a sense of realism that it doesn't feel so much like an artsy film, but it feels like you're actually there in a real experience.
Didn't he also do the Equalizer with Denzel?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I'm a fan of his work. Sorry to interrupt there.
No worries. I appreciate that. Yeah, he's definitely who I try to study the most currently. I think there's something about that realism that I really want to capture.
Awesome. Did you have any favorite movies growing up that got you interested in filmmaking?
Sure. A lot of the films, and as I mentioned, being in the martial arts world, I really wanted to do films like 70s kung fu flicks. You don't see a lot of that style of filmmaking anymore. But there was something about it where it was just almost like an action scene from the beginning to the end of the movie. I've always wanted to do something like that. Very influential. Enter the Dragon was a really big one for me too. That was really a film that I watched a lot as a kid. Really set the tone for me as an artist. Really looking at how Bruce Lee, his presence on the screen, and how he can make someone believe anything. And that's really what I want to do. I want to be able to make films where I can make people believe whatever the story, that they're there and that this is a real experience.
Nice. So are there any actors? Let's pretend that you have, an unlimited budget and you get the pick of the litter. What would be your favorite actors to be able to work with?
Sure. It's funny you say that. There are a lot of actors that I would love to work with. But one of the things that I've always wanted creatively, I've always liked working with new actors. Okay. And the reason why is because I feel like there's a blank canvas there. So if you say, oh, this is Leonardo DiCaprio movie, you kind of have an expectation of what you're going to see, or this is Brad Pitt or Adam Sandler or whoever. You kind of have an idea of what you're going to see, and sometimes that overshadows the ability of telling like a story because you're looking for this person to be Denzel or whoever it is. So I really like the idea of working with undiscovered artists. I know from a distribution standpoint, that's not always a good idea. From a business standpoint, you have to have a familiar face that will help get the film seen in different regions and to recoup whatever investments are there. I understand that, but my personal favorite is working with like undiscovered talent and just letting them kind of do something new.
Yeah, because there's definitely like if you see a Tom Cruise movie, sometimes it's almost impossible to not look at the screen and say that's Tom Cruise and instead see them as the character. So I totally understand that. You mentioned something and kind of mentioned it earlier about the balance between the business side of filmmaking and the creative side of filmmaking. How do you go about balancing that? Because there is, in order to be able to continue making things, people have to watch what you're making, but at the same time, you want to kind of stay true to your vision. So what kind of struggles have you had with that, and how do you navigate those waters?
Sure. I think that's actually a really good question. That in the beginning phases of my journey when I was a writer only, I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I needed to learn. So I would write scripts based on my heart. And so I would say, I'm going to make a movie where every scene has something that you've never seen before. And artistically, it would be visually stunning to see this script. But from a budget standpoint, it's horrible. Like you make a movie where the budget would be like on the level of the Avengers and the actual content of the film wouldn't support it. So artistically, if you're a producer, why would you want to make this film? How would you ever get the money back for it? It just wouldn't make sense. And so a lot of my earlier scripts I would basically shoot myself in the foot by doing that. I think that what really helped me was becoming a producer. So when I actually made DUI, that's all of my own money that made that film. And so through that process, I'm able to see, man, I wish I didn't write that into the script because now I see how it's financially impacting me. and how difficult it was, how much easier it would have been if I would have shot this scene at this time or at this location versus what I did. We shot DUI out at an abandoned campground, and we were trying to simulate like an environment, like a street, like a long street where it didn't feel like Los Angeles. It felt like you were somewhere else, like in Ohio. And by doing that, we had to physically light a long stretch of just dirt where we didn't have the any power. So it's generators everywhere, like lights everywhere that we've created, and the cost for it was just astronomical. And artistically, it's like I really wanted this look, but financially, it really took a lot out of my budget. And it really taught me a lot about being a producer. What can I do differently to actually look at the cost of the project, and also another lesson I learned in the bows. When we're doing casting, it's not just about who captures the character the best, but looking at the value of what this particular actor brings to the project. So if you have someone who has like a social media following, that person has a built-in audience that they can market your film to. So for the bows, we work with Tiffany Stanley, who's Maxim cover model, Sports Illustrated cover model. She's really big, especially in the UK, and so it was really helpful. She has an audience that she can market the project to. So you really look at things differently when you're a producer versus being just a writer.
That has to be a really tough balancing act when you're the one bankrolling your own creative image or your own creative project, I should say, having to balance that. I want this product to be as good as possible, but at the same time, I'm paying for it. Maybe we could cut some corners here and there. I have to imagine that kind of forces you to get creative sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the best part comes from that. It comes from not having that infinite bankroll. I think it really forces you to tell a different story, and sometimes it's a better story because you're able to think outside the box a little bit.
Absolutely. So since we are talking about, Copley Road is a horror movie, I wanted to ask you, if you had to find yourself facing off against one of the following, who would you choose? Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, Michael Myers from Halloween, Pinhead from Hellraiser, or Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Oh, God. Wow, it's a tough selection of people. I would think that Jason would give me some slack, just because my name is Jason, too. But he's really crafty. Michael Myers, something about Jason and Michael Myers, because they're both like human. There's something that seems like they would be easier to go against. Like Michael Myers being a human being, there should be ways of stopping him, even though it seems like he somehow always finds a way to get out of the scenario. But it seems like if you shoot him, in theory, he should die, even though he's taken several bullet wounds.
In theory, yes.
Yes. I would take my chances against Michael, though. I think, especially now that he's getting a little older, I may be able to.
Just hope Michael Myers' hip goes out on him when he's chasing you.
Exactly. You're right.
All right, man. Well, is there anything else that you want to tell the fans out there or say about your project?
Sure. I just want to thank everyone for the love and support that they've shown towards this project. It's been really incredible. I think it really shows that Copley Road is bigger than me or just this project. It's really about a connection that everyone feels together. And that's been my goal for this project, really, is for all of us to work together, not just for this film, but building a platform so we can keep filming other projects in the Ohio area. So again, I appreciate all the support, and let's make this film and let's keep making films together.
Absolutely. And I'm super excited about it. And as the process goes on, I'd love to have you back on when the movie's ready to come out or when you're promoting auditions or anything like that. And also when you are having auditions, your boy's got some acting chops, so maybe I'll show up at one of those auditions. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Jason.
Oh, my pleasure.
Actually, real quick before we end, is there do you have a Twitter or anything you want to plug, or just the Facebook page to direct people to?
Sure. So currently it's the Facebook page. We have an Instagram that we've just started recently. We're starting to build that out. Copley Road Movie for Instagram. We're going to do Twitter next. We've been slowly trying to build them out. Then we'll end at YouTube at some point as well. But right now, our main source would be the Facebook page. That's where all of our updates and my blog and everything will be currently, and then we'll branch out from there.
And everybody go like that Facebook page. Jason, thanks again for coming on. It was a pleasure talking to you, man.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Take care.
super cool to be able to talk to Jason, and I really am excited about that movie, and I wasn't kidding. When auditions come around, I'm gonna be auditioning for that. So maybe sometime in the future you'll see your boy Dan in a feature film. Okay, so that was the fun stuff, and I alluded to earlier we would be getting into some more serious stuff, talking about my summer sabbatical, my time off over the summer. Um, Simply put, sometimes you hitch your wagon to the wrong horse and things fall apart, and that's kind of what happened to me. I ended up going through a few months of severe anxiety, and fans of the network will remember that I did an episode about depression with Joe and Patrick on the Guiltless podcast. Um, Anxiety is the other side of that coin for me. And my anxiety when I go through it is actually a lot worse than my depression. So for a good 3-month period there, I was pretty much unable to leave my house, and for long stretches unable to even leave my bed. It was kind of a waking nightmare all day, panic attacks just never ending. And so I like to take opportunities like this when I'm reminded of that struggle that I have to go through. Anybody that's out there listening, if you're going through something like that, something with a mental illness or really anything that you're struggling with, don't be afraid to ask for help. I know that asking for help is a tough thing, and even beyond the anxiety, my life pretty much fell apart, and I had to ask for help in other areas. And I won't name the name because he's not the kind of guy that likes having his name out there, but I have a really good friend who, for the second time in my life, when I was at a really low point, came through for me and let me stay with him. And like I said, I'm not going to say his name, but anybody that knows me personally probably knows who I'm talking about, and I can't thank him enough. And but my point is, it was difficult to ask for help. But when you're going through struggles like depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder or anything that you might be going through, there are people out there that can help you. You know, there's medical professionals, and whatever problem it is that you have, if it's a medical problem, and mental health is a medical problem, talk to a doctor. It's not always a pleasant experience, but seek out the help, because there is help out there, and you don't have to face it alone. And when it comes to other things in your life, whether it's financial problems or if you're going through a transition that's really tough, seek out your friends. Really get into those relationships. It feels like in 2019 we're so disconnected from each other because we exist on social media, but it really is important and very helpful to be able to have actual real personal connections with people. So try to live in the real world as much as you do in the fake world of the internet. But anyway, I'm getting my life back together. Releasing this episode is really good for me. I've missed doing the podcast. I've missed the sense of normalcy. I have a new place now. Things are starting to get back to normal, and I'm really happy about it. I'm sorry that I took all that time off and wasn't releasing new episodes, but I am back, and we're gonna rock this thing out. I want to thank Jason E. Woods for joining us and doing that interview. Again, go check out their Facebook page, Copley Road Movie, on Facebook. They're also on Instagram. It's something that I'm like I said, super excited about and want to promote that. So go out there and check them out. Shout out to, like I said before, Patrick and Joe for keeping the network going in my absence. But I'm back. And a shout out to my erstwhile co-host Felicia, who was also a very, very good friend to me during that time that I was struggling. And yeah, I guess that's it for me. We're back, and you can expect a new episode next week and the week after, and all that. So thank you for joining us on the Pop Culture Spectrum, and we will see you next time.